All right, good morning, everybody. This is Monta Knutson coming back for Coffee with Monta over here at Bridges to Change. Each week, we're trying to highlight community partners who are out there doing work that is most impactful for our communities. And so it's also a platform for me to connect with the organization, the greater organization, in terms of some of the policy work and other things that I'm doing in my role here as the executive director at Bridges to Change. And super excited. Today we have on Jason Nelson, who is the director of culturally specific services over at Holistic Health. Good morning, Jason. How you doing?
I feel good. I feel confident in the work that we're doing, and quite frankly, I'm grateful to have been invited to such a platform that can be live streamed and meet different areas of people that may not otherwise know we exist. Yes.
Yeah, and yesterday I got the opportunity to finally meet you. I think I've seen you popping in and out of the gym in St. John's a time or two with Jamaica. So I've seen you around. We've never had a chance to meet. Yesterday, we had a chance to connect at an all-day retreat for the Health Justice Recovery Alliance to talk about what that alliance is doing and what we want to do, and kind of help kind of strategize how to best position ourselves for supporting services. So I got to meet you and I heard you speak on quite a few issues. But to kick us off, can you just give us like an overview of what you all are doing over there? Maybe a little background on your organization.
Oh, well, let's start with the background of the organization, which I believe, and I train new employees in such a way to know where we come from so that we can respect going forward the work that we do. So Jamaica and I, having lived experience, we came together with an idea to how do we better serve the community that we once was a part of the fabric of the sordid living, okay, addictions, crime, and just not taking care of life and being responsible there. So what we decided to do was create a nonprofit organization called Kingdom Business Ministries. And with Kingdom Business Ministries, what we would do would go out and feed the homeless on our own bill. We weren't rich people. We weren't even well-to-do people. We were just people who found a way, to make a way for ourselves and other people. So by doing that, we went out, of course, downtown, greater metropolitan area, wherever we felt that there was a need, that we would go. And we fed the people from our refrigerator, from our kitchen, cooking the food, what have you, clothing them from clothes that weren't clothes that you wouldn't wear or I wouldn't wear. Would be clothes that we would wear. So we made sure that it wasn't hand-me-downs in such a way because something was tore, a button was missing, and things like that. So that's the integrity we wanted to keep installed in our interactions with the community. So with that, we decided, we was like, how do we expand and make a greater impact in a positive way? And it was suggested to us because we are doing such a great social work, in a lot of platforms we spoke on, we were coming in such a scientific way, which I didn't even think we were. I didn't know. So we were actually guided. We had mentors who had guided us to social work in the addictions field. Okay, so we went to PCC together in 2014, and we began to be a part of the drug addictions program there, counseling program there. And from there, we began to accelerate, had a gentleman's type of competition, gentlewoman competition, however you want to say, and quite frankly, I dropped out of school, man, at a very young age, and I got unconventional education, meaning I love to read, I love to research, no matter what I was doing in life. And so that was transferable skills, meaning the strengthening of the brain, research, and retention. So I actually applied it in a more structured educational environment, and Jamaica had already had that type of history. But we both had fun going through. I beat her out by GPA every single year, every single quarter rather, and I was so happy for that. But I failed miserably my first semester, and I almost dropped off of the game plan because that was very frustrating. But I stuck it out, and someone told me, go inside the classroom because you're gonna have a lot of questions. And from there, I've never seen a C and only had 2 Bs throughout the 3 years I was there. So, and that's, graduated in 2016, graduated program 2017. We began to expand our activities and came with the idea of holistic human behavior healthcare. Your voice, your choice, your healing. We just thought that if we can just make sure, because our voices are very powerful if we are speaking to a real issue. Okay, it's not just people, chattering for no reason at all. And we wanted to make sure that people with lived experiences seeking services and getting connected to services, their voices begin to be heard. And so we wanted to take a unique approach to that and not necessarily just be a provider, but be someone who can employ the pain and life experience or lived experience of other people and ourselves. So instead of getting rid of the trauma and the pain, let it work for us. Employ it and let it begin to heal the community by bringing awareness and making sure that we are, drum majors to the resolve and the dissolution of that marriage when it comes to trauma. Okay, because a lot of us are married to our trauma and we really don't know how to make that divorce happen. So we began to do the unique work. And so we took a lot of time painstakingly just trying to figure out holistic human behavior healthcare. And she was working for another, dominant culture agency and getting skill sets and I was working for Transition Project, which was a great experience for myself because there you're working with a very acute group of individuals with mental health and addictions, and that's really in the trenches. And I worked there for 19 months, and so I got a lot of experience, hands-on experience, meaning doing CPR on human beings because of overdoses, applying Narcan, getting educated on mental health first aider, and knowing how to really get into the mental health field and do some things. And so we decided to help another individual open up a clinic. And we said, we've been helping a lot of people. How do we get ourselves in an administrative role and at the table, right? So that we can somehow have a conversation with the people who are doing the work, such as yourself. Jamaica had nothing but high accolades for you, Monta, to be honest and open about that. And so we decided to say we're going to go out for our own, and we did. At Jamaica, she did the homework. She's very astute when it comes to paperwork, and she can blaze through it. I'm a methodical person, so she's the throttle and I'm the brake. Okay, so where it's good for us to go fast and forward, she's good for that. Where it's good to take a pause and analyze, I'm good for that. So it's a good team, a match made in heaven, if you will. So we went on with the application to open up, to expand our activities from Kingdom Business Ministries into holistic human behavior healthcare, which is more clinical, right? So we got our certification, we had gotten our approval, and lightning speed time. We opened up during the pandemic, and we sustained even through that. Okay, so, and actually they didn't know because offices were closed at Oregon Health Authority, and they're the ones who approved you through the audit, the first audit you have anyway for applications and different things like that. So it was 3 weeks, man, 3 weeks. So, and we was off and running.
That is such a great story. And I've known Jamaica throughout the field for years. And I was so excited when she talked about taking this next step you all have taken. And it sounds like it's been quite a journey, and even a journey through taking on the business side, taking a risk like that during COVID. And it sounds like, you have the forces working with you both to be successful. And it's such a need in our community right now, in your community right now, specifically. And I think about, are you from Portland? Born and raised?
Born and raised.
Born and raised. I think about, this shift. I feel like we have momentum to help stand up and support culturally specific organizations on their own. So I think there's I feel like there's momentum in the community. And I think for like white dominant organizations like mine, where we tried to launch, a program or two to serve culturally specific populations, and we didn't do a good job. And I think, for me, where, here's part of where I was naive at, so I grew up I hung out in Northeast. I was in prison with, Nubian Smith, Chew, Marcus Branch, Fish, all the old school folks back in the 80s and 90s. And I was like, I think I can get a grip on like putting a team together and making this happen. But that doesn't translate to culturally specific services, right? So we need culturally specific providers to get stood up. And what I heard you talking about yesterday in our retreat, you talked about you controlling the narrative for culturally specific services at Holistic Health. And so I was wondering if you can maybe unpack that a little bit more about what is your approach, why you're doing it, roadblocks, successes, and just kind of expand on that, part of the conversation you were sharing yesterday.
Okay, let's start with roadblocks. Okay, in the beginning, we know, and even now, that there's a lot of people who are not sold out for redefining what culturally specific services is, because we want to continue to stand on culturally responsive, meaning that we don't isolate our focus for services for any group of person. So culturally responsive, we know we just meet the people where they are, whoever they are, blue or purple hair is how I often state. Well, that's a cultural, a dynamic that we have to address, because these skateboarders, that's a different culture. You see what I mean? And if this culture of individual that comes from this culture, if they're experiencing addiction, chemical dependency, or any mental health matters, then we have to understand that culture, have someone who was effective in, because their experience is connected to their lifestyle. You see, so this is the reason why we want to control the narrative, because we are of the community we serve, and we have some of the most low barrier experiences, if I can use that term, as it relates to lived experiences. So prison, I've been there, I've done cumulatively 17 and a half years. I've had addiction, chemical dependency. I've had tolerances that went out of this universe, which spiraled my life out of control. So what we bring is a unique conversation. We don't apologize for how we say it or what we say. We're just respectful when saying. And we're not blaming people, but the simple fact that we know that right now, the responsibility is for us to acknowledge that there's an issue, that there's a system that has been in place historically, that we need to address the tenets of that system in order to dismantle it. Okay, there's no reason for it to yet exist. And the people endorsing these particular constructs, in my opinion, are continually endorsing the life that we see now wasting away in our community through drug addictions. Now, violence impacted communities such as the Black community. I see a lot of people that I've grown up with, their children dying. Okay, so the barrier is more important to discuss, because if we don't get over the barriers, then our work is in vain, if you will, because the results are so minimal that it will not be believable or impactful in a broad sense. And so we want to be pervasive. And how to be that, we have to be invasive, where there is people not having the conversation at some of these high-stake board meetings. Jamaica wanted me to be sure that I shared the mission statement as Holistic Healing Behavioral Health Care's mission is to eliminate structural barriers for people experiencing racism and discrimination while accessing behavioral health care. Our vision is to provide a sense of safety, community, and belonging that will lead to better outcomes for HHBH clients. So I personally am developing what is called a global partnership initiative, okay, which in this communication that we're having is similar to what that would look like, meaning that people from dominant culture agencies, people from similar agencies as HHBH will be coming together intentionally, right, under a certain movement with a certain target. And with that system, we destroy the system that we know creates the barriers for vulnerable populations of people to get the services that they need, and that they don't get the services that they need because it yet exists. So these hurdles, not hard to get over. It's just that we need someone with the equity lens to understand that's in the dominant culture system that is providing the same services, to speak up on that behalf, not to just agree that it exists, but to speak up on behalf of the work that's being done in order to dismantle that particular construct.
Yeah, and I think yesterday Jamaica was talking about being at the tables where it matters to talk about your work and the work that you're doing out there. And when I'm talking about tables, you know, the policy tables, the funding tables, right? Because all the work that you're talking about doing, the barrier is breaking down those systems that are blocking what's needed to get the work done. It's the funding, right? So how do we break down those, you know, long-standing dominant systems that are structured in racism, and how do we stand up organizations through new means of funding? And I think you're right. I think it's bringing allies to the table, to where we can also advocate for the work that other organizations are doing, to support in any way that we can, so you all can become stronger, have the leverage that you need to get the resources that you need to do the work that you're called to do. You know?
Yeah, we don't want to assimilate to succeed. That's the downfall. I believe we should be able to be culturally specific, meaning that, see, here you will find a drum being beat. You will see this, like Jamaica says oftentimes. This is Big Mama's house. If you need a hug, there's a hug in here. You know, if you need some food, there's food in the refrigerator. You know, no one leaves here hungry, if it's even for the need to address the addiction or mental health, or if it's the nutritional value and the need that you have. We're not going to deny you anything, and we're going to go to the greatest heights in order that we provide these things, because we know a hungry man can't hear you with, you know, even though you're telling him good things. He can't hear you when his stomach is hurting off of hunger, you know. So we make sure that we're here. Let me take one pause. I'm on this meeting. Thank you. I had to calm down the chatter. People are walking into work and they're getting.
Everybody sounds excited to be there.
Oh, and that's a great thing. I just wanted to kind of just feel it, because they're in front of my office door. So, but thank you for that patience there. And I didn't mean to be disruptive either.
No, it's all good. It's all good. What are some of the you know, roadblocks that you all have run into with kind of getting your organization up and going in a cadence that feels good? You know,
we don't want to have to worry about paying or keeping people employed, because the energy around here is so familiar, it's family related, meaning that when people engage, we don't engage them with a stiff neck or a systemic neck. Okay, it's not stiff. You know, it's very flexible, but meaningful to you know, provide them with the services necessary so that they can heal in their lives, right? We're not so loose in that sense to where, you know, you can just run around and not get your work done, okay, and not be accountable for your life. But what we do know is that money is most important, okay? Money is so important in order to employ people that can do the work, in order for people to come in and get the work done for them. So when we are at these tables, Jamaica's, you know, mantra is, the irony, mantra, you know, her mantra is, you know, really, if we're calling these dollars black dollars, you know, when we start saying black dollars, black people dollars, then you really need to use that money in the black community. Okay. One of the things that I notice is that we ask for some guidance in infrastructure. You know, you can't just, you could put a fighter in the ring too early and kill him off. He may have a very great talent early on, you can see as a trainer, but you put him in the ring too early with a good fighter. That good fighter is gonna kill him off no matter how good his talent or the vision of his talent is, and while it develops. So it is with new organizations. We've done work like this for decades, but we've never had to harness it inside of a structural environment. It was at our whim. Now that we're in a structural environment, we know that it takes finances. So we need someone to come in and help build infrastructure. We did, but we learned, and, you know, do it yourself kind of thing. Watch YouTube or get a book, you know, and then start learning and teaching yourselves how to do things. And then you start gearing yourself up to hear certain, you know, buzzwords in meetings, and then that's the person who has the knowledge. So then you address that person. Is it possible that you can help us do this, which you're a master of, or you're very well to do with. And that's what we started doing, right? But the promises that are being made on some of these panels aren't being fulfilled. Okay, you throw us money, let's just use a phantom number of $100,000, right? But the need is over 300,000. What am I gonna do with that $100,000? But suffer and worry about sustaining what it was intended for, because we need more. The population that we're serving, we know we need a force in order to help heal, right? Black and brown communities have been underrepresented in these service, mental health and addiction services, overrepresented on the yard, in the prison yards, you see, and in jails. Also, when I've seen two, individuals right in front of our agency fighting with swords. Do you know the police was right there and they drove by as if they was watching a drive-by outside movie theater show or something? It was crazy, right? It's right here by the police station, man. And it was, but then I've also experienced where there was an argument between two people of the dominant culture. The police actually walked over from the precinct and dialogued, resolved the issue, and went back to business as usual. You had two people, but of color, and kill themselves, you know what I'm saying, with swords, and you have two people just arguing, just all they hitting each other with is spit. And then, and somehow this draws the attention. So I think there's an imbalance, whether we're talking about our needs financially, infrastructural wise, there still has to be believable, right? It has to be believed that it is needed in our community. A lot of people saying that it's needed, but where is the financial force? I mean, we should be looking like pigs around here trying to hold all the money that they know that is needed in order, or others know that's needed in order to do the work that we do, right?
Yeah, I think, and we've been talking about this, for the Measure 110 committee before the money was ready to go out, right? When we were talking about most impacted communities, most impacted by the war on drugs. And you're right, it's like funders giving culturally, this is my opinion, funders giving culturally specific organizations money for services is not enough, right? They need finance, they need administrative support, they need risk management. So all these things, which takes, a lot of people don't know, and this could be good for my organization, is like all of the administrative stuff it takes to keep an organization safe and running and operating. You have to have that foundation in place to be sustainable long term. So when you're getting 100G, when you need 300 for just the services, is still not enough. Even if they gave you the 300 for the services, you need to backfill to bring up the administrative support to be successful long term. And so, and you're right, organizations are not fully seeing that right now. How are we going to stand up organizations that need the most administrative support? And you know what? It's not like, the funders need to be able to say, okay, we're going to throw $600,000 into administrative support into this organization to get it stood up and running so it can be here long term, right? Where there's no metrics or you need to do this and that. It's literally to support the operations of the organization so you can be sustainable and work on the things that are most important, the service structure part. But you're trying to do it all with not enough.
With not enough. But I'm going to tell you what is enough. Making a way out of no way. This is what I think about, because this is not where we started. Okay. And we were successful even when we had not so much. Okay. It's because it's the fire that's in the individual. See, the vision, and that you believe in what you are doing, that creates you get a lot of distance in that, okay? So one of the things I want to say, Monta, is two things. I'm gonna say first, Kung Fu Zu, who's known in the West as Confucius, right? He said, don't go the way of the path that's already been laid, go a different way and create your own path. Sometimes we have to go a unique way, right? A way that has uncharted waters, if you will, because we learn new things about the environments, right? That we're now creating a trail through or a path through. So this holistic healing behavioral healthcare is one of those paths. We're not taking a unique approach to the barriers. We're not taking we're taking a unique approach to how we deal with our clients, how we're creating and controlling the narrative here. You see, we don't need anybody's permission to help the people because the people have a problem, you see, and we don't need to wait on statistics and measures to be passed, you see, and this is what makes these issues so chronic is because we do sit in delay, suspended animation, if you will, waiting on someone else who does not have these lived experiences on their answer to how to deal with it when we and with lived experiences know. So we're going to start with a morsel. We're going to share a piece of bread and we're going to eat from that until we, learn how to cook the bread ourselves or gain the ingredients in order to create the bread ourselves. This is just how it works, And then, Einstein said this. He said, and I read, he said that, adversity introduces a man to himself. So while we're facing these adversities in our community, I don't care where you work, how high a class person you are, guess what? You are now being revealed, identified of who you are based on how you face the adversities, these real life situations that are killing not only the lives of adults, but adults who lead and govern the lives of the youth. Now the youth perish. We have no future if the youth cannot live, if they cannot thrive academically, if they cannot thrive nutritionally, if they cannot, get the right education on how to deal with the barriers that we may not finish dismantling as the senior group. We need to pass down the information and the skill set. We can't do it because we're allowing that chronic disease to exist too long in the lives of the adults and not getting in there with that fire to burn it out. And a fire is the only way to truly sterilize a situation, right? We don't want to sanitize nothing. We want to sterilize it, meaning we want to get totally rid of addiction. We want to get totally rid of houselessness. We want to totally get rid of mental health in a way to where it causes these debilitations in people's lives where they can't go to work. They can't really, be a part of their families. They're having these, schizoaffective experiences that can be under management had these services been, financially funded and the professionals can deal with and help guide through that. So these are the things that get us fired up. You see, yeah, we know that there's a problem. We got to get to it.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I think it's also just, it comes from, for folks who identify as justice involved previously in recovery, we seem to have this tenacity about us to push through against whatever adversity comes our way. And if you're going straight and there's a block there, you go around it. It's never like, I can't do it. It's like, okay, how do I do it? Right. Because, being an ex-con, we always find a way, and you could take those and you can put them into your professional life, right? I'd think about, I started at Bridges in 2008 as a recovery mentor, and in 2015 I became the executive director after the founders retired, and had this thing just kind of grow, but most everything we just figured out along the way, right? Research. I'm not an academic person. I did the drug and alcohol program at PCC, years ago, but I'm just not one that I just can't sit in a classroom. I don't learn that way, but I learned everything about being an executive director on my own research, and every challenge was an opportunity to learn and to figure it out,
Put this in your bag, Monta. And I want you to carry this with the rest of your life because I've been carrying it. One of my mentors told me, Rob Richardson, I just named him because he's he was on task, man, coming into the prisons. He was in the movie Star Crazy. That's his lived experience. You know, he was there with Richard Pryor on the prison yard because he was in prison, you see. And they used real, you know, cons that was locked down. So he told me, he said, Harvard can't come get what you got, but you gonna go get what Harvard has. See, the brain never stops working, you see, to learn. It never does. But a lived experience, you can't rewind in the book and try to train yourself with lived experience. It's just not, it's impossible, right? And knowing these things are not isolated to one group of people, these are all people. So I know, like I had mentioned yesterday at the retreat, about my house or my neighbor's house being on fire. You see, I used to be so pro-Black where I was blacked out. I could not see anyone else's need because my own trauma capsulized me. Okay, this is not wrong. This is how I stayed safe. Okay, but learning that not everyone had my worst interests at heart, you see, but that there was some room for collaboration in order that I can develop social skills. Because a person who is so pro anything becomes antisocial with anything else. So if I'm so pro my house and my neighbor's house is on fire, I will not help him. I worry about my water bill. I will worry about me keeping me safe. You know, I'm gonna build a wall so it can burn down without affecting my house. I'm gonna do all kinds of things, right? And that's what we see in politics while we're raising a voice for the financial need. People are thinking that if we do give them this money, somebody's going to lose something. Well, if the money is earmarked for a certain service, then what's the problem? See, and the problem is that now that people are unanimously coming together with a voice and receiving these funds in order to target addiction, which has no color, mental health, which has no color, and we know this, but we know that people of color who have these issues are not being handled fairly or with equity for receiving the service so they can manage these issues. However, we know that everyone is stung by this vicious addiction, by these vicious ailments. And if I can be quite honest and open, in my greatest observation, it's not long for even us who have beat addiction and have brought some management to mental health. It's not long where that cancer around us will become once again ours. You see, addiction doesn't care. Something we're gonna feed, because that old guy never really goes away. And he shows up without your permission and we have to keep him under subjection. So, you know, I just want to be mindful of that too, where we are sober, that nemesis will come and show itself again, and we will be strong enough and have enough power behind us in order to resist it. Yeah.
Well, Jason, I really want to thank you for coming on today. I'm sure you got a busy day ahead of you as well. And, you know, one last question is, there's a lot of comments about this yesterday in different ways. How do you think is the best way for the dominant culture to support organizations like yours? You know, because we hear, we see all the Black Lives Matter signs in people's yards. We see, people at different events, but what can we actually do,
So let me use this as an analogy. If I'm going through you know how you go through an airport and then they have to check your bag? Sometimes they have to unpack it. And then everybody around you gets to see what's in your bag, right? So while I know some things that's within the privileged of the dominant culture, right? I know what's in their bag. And that's what I want to be used, right? To unpack the privilege and lend it. You see, lend it to me, meaning that, no, I don't want to trade places. What I want you to do is take me to the place that you go, and then you endorse me. and you say, I vouch for this person, for this organization, for this particular service. And then guess what? Your word is bond, right? We don't have to convince everybody. We just need someone who's convinced enough to go to the people who are cutting the check or willing to lend the stage. Let us go down here on one of these, in one of these, these rooms down here in the chambers of Congress, and let us speak directly, not around, but directly to culturally specific services, and how white privilege, if it unpacks itself and lends itself to this cause, then we can influence broadly and not just so domestically. It's just right now so isolated, right? So that's how the dominant culture system, as well as people of the dominant culture, can help. Not denying self, but allowing self to help financially as well as with their voices. But together, not just your voice, because the voice can just be a ploy to say that you have a support that's not realistic to the need in order to address the issue. Money is needed to address the issue.
I like what Jared said yesterday. We don't need allies, we need accomplices.
Oh, I wrote that down. I wrote that down. Yeah, he said we need allies and not accomplices. I wrote that down, man.
Yeah.
Someone who's willing to get dirty, down and dirty with you is what he finally said.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, myself, Bridges to Change, like we're here to help in any way. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with you more in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. I know there's much more we could say, but there's never going to be enough time.
Yeah.
So the conversation continues.
Okay. All right. You have a great day, Jason, and I'll talk at you again later.
All right. Not at me, but with me. That's not a correction. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Got it.
All right, my friend. Be well.
All right. You as well.
Take care. Bye-bye.